As the Hollywood blockbuster fascinatingly rediscovers old-fashioned filmmaking, more on that in just a moment, if they could only understand that a key component to old-fashioned filmmaking was great scripts, then they would really be cooking with gas. Because, oh boy, the first third of this movie is a frickin' masterpiece. Jaw on the floor. And if you're a cinephile, in any way, it is worth seeing War for the Planet of the Apes just for the first 45 minutes or so, because it will blow your mind. Even though you then have to sit through an hour and 15 minutes that is absolutely a slog to get through. Like, it goes from like one of the best movies I've ever seen to one of the worst movies I've ever seen. All right, so what's so good in the first third? Oh, I've got a list. All right, so number one, as I said, old school filmmaking. First Patty J, now Matt Reeves. It is a joy and unexpected to see modern visual effects used to plus old-fashioned, more story-centric filmmaking. And while Wonder Woman imitates the 1940s in terms of filmmaking, War for the Planet of the Apes is totally the 60s, which is so much fun. Like from the title font to the title font, that was so great, to the opening scene for this movie, oh boy, to the camera work, to the pacing. The movie has an epic David Lean quality. And if you're not familiar with David Lean's work, get familiar. I'm talking Dr. Zhivago, Bridge over the River Kwai, like that. Then the score. Oh, I liked Michael Giacchino before, but now I worship at his altar. Dr. Zhivago, by the way, is one of my favorite scores of all time. Great to work to. But I liked this just as much. And, they still use full orchestras to make movie scores. But this, you felt it. It was like going to a classical music concert. And if you can get to a really good classical music concert, they're so much fun to attend. But to overlay it with a sci-fi action film, I was having so much fun. And the visuals are so bold. There is a green laser sequence in a series of caves and waterfalls that is something that every filmmaker should aspire to. This film has a control of visual storytelling usually reserved for animation, both American and anime. And then it also had a theme park feel. The world building and a feeling of suspense and this immersive quality. A lot like the staging for a ride. The reason I say theme park ride is because they have to get you ready really fast, right? They have to immediately make you feel like you're entering this world and also to be very excited about what's to come. And again, they have to do it very quickly. And I've never seen a movie use those same tactics. Jurassic Park a little bit. I would consider, Matt Reeves is already going to do the Batman, but I think he would probably do a very good job with the Jurassic films as well. Although he apparently can't realize when he has a crap script. We'll get to that. But I really love the theme park aspects quite a bit. So what does go wrong? Well, as soon as they hit the military compound, the movie falls apart for a couple of reasons. One, for instance, it suddenly feels very, very small and inconsequential. Like you're like, oh, why am I wasting my time here? This doesn't seem as important as you made it, as you first made it seem, and we'll discuss that in the spoiler review. Then Woody Harrelson is not only miscast, but he's playing such a stereotypical zealot that you just write him off. You're like, oh, that's not at all compelling. Like you always want a villain who you could be like, I kind of see where you're coming from, but here you're just like, you're one of those crazies. Oh, all right. Also, he makes a tactical decision about Caesar that, again, we have to save for the spoiler review to discuss, but it makes no sense, and it's totally out of character. You can't have respect for a character that would make such a tactical error. It's so blatantly to serve the story and the movie that it takes you out of the movie. Also, this cliche that guards don't pay attention has got to stop, because if guards in prisons in real life were this lazy, then we'd have a lot more escaped convicts. I mean, it's ridiculous. Also, humanity is depicted as wall-to-wall jerks, and I'm using a nice word there. And I understand that that's supposed to be the point, but it's not made in a particularly compelling manner. I mean, look, I'm a human. You're a human. I don't know how you feel about it, but I personally feel if you're going to ask me to root against my team, humanity, you're going to have to work a lot harder to convince me to turn on my own peeps than this movie does. I will say, though, that hardcore Apes fans will find it at least interesting, at the very least, that this movie directly sets up the very first Planet of the Apes. Even I, as a casual Apes fan, found it interesting. However, I felt a lot of the time the movie made it feel like that was the priority rather than telling a really good story. They're like, we established the links, we're good. And it's like, nah. Then Andy Serkis, of course, was breathtaking. Although, after seeing him in the Black Panther trailer and how broad his performance is there, you realize the range he has as an actor. And I think it continues to be a great shame, one of the great shames of the acting community, that they have not recognized his work with motion capture, even with the nomination. I'm not saying he has to win. I know change is hard. I know it scares the acting community that one day maybe more of them will be asked to do motion capture work. But they should be pleased because, and I think as long as the media and people like myself and you guys as well as the audience recognize the work that's being done here, I mean, everybody knows who Andy Serkis is, then I think it's all good, right? It's supposed to be about the work, isn't it? And on that note, Steve Zahn is also spectacular as the only other talking ape, and he's channeling Mark Rylance like nobody's business. And, his performance is both hilarious, some real laugh-out-loud moments with him, and it's also very touching, which, of course, is what Steve Zahn is totally known for, but unfortunately rarely asked to do these days. I'd also like to point out that while I understand that this whole thing is supposed to be a Twilight Zone-esque story where apes and man switch places, I think we've come a long way in understanding what apes are like since the first movie was made. How they think, their social structure, and I would love to see that incorporated more into this franchise. Because right now, they just seem like humans wearing ape suits, to be perfectly honest with you. And I mean, and to some degree that is what they are, right? It used to be ape suits back in the original movie. Now it's motion capture suits. But I think that if you could show, just because apes became smarter and some of them started to learn language, etc. I don't think they would totally abandon how they lived before, right? Or maybe that should be discussed more. But I felt that particularly in the second 2/3 of the film, they were just reenacting moments of human oppression throughout history, but just now with apes. And you're like, I think we could do better than that. It is also really mind-boggling that a movie like this can make its way through pre-production, production, and post-production, and nobody, from the filmmakers to the people at the studio looking at it, come together, are like, you know what? The second 2/3 of this movie aren't good. I don't understand why nobody pointed that out. Especially because the first third shows what this team is capable of doing. I'd be like, that no one raised their hand and was like, does it bother anyone else that our movie totally falls apart a third in, right? Isn't it a little embarrassing? Don't you think maybe, since we could do the first third, we should just try a little harder? I mean, I know that in their defense, the first third of a movie is the easiest to do, and the middle and the end are tough. But that's what makes somebody a professional, that they can tackle the second and final thirds of a film. And these are supposed to be professionals. And, I think that you're seeing U.S. audiences rally against sloppy filmmaking a little bit, but the foreign box office is keeping it alive. I'll be curious to see how this movie does, though, because it's such an intellectual blockbuster. And I will say that the end is pretty neat. I did like the end. That was pretty cool. But it doesn't do enough to redeem the whole middle chunk of the movie. And then I really hated the end of the movie, like the end. But we'll talk about all that in the spoiler review. So that's my review of War for the Planet of the Apes. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about it down below. Do not put spoilers in the comment section. Save those for the spoiler review, because there are some cool reveals in the film. All right, thank you so much for tuning in, and you can check out some more videos right now.